everybody. Welcome to the Calgary Real Estate Show for Thursday, January 25th. The weather is stunning outside, and we're super excited to bring you another edition of the show today. It's going to go longer. I'm not going to lie. You can watch the weekly stats. You want to log off and watch it later because we are going to be reviewing the Calgary Real Estate Board's 2024 forecast. So kind of going to do it in two parts, our regular show, and then at the end, we're going to do the forecast part. So feel free to stay tuned if you are on your lunch hour and need something to do. So welcome. Jaden, how are you?
I'm loving life, buddy. Can't beat this weather. Can actually spend some time outdoors. How about you guys?
Right? Yes.
Yeah, it's gorgeous out.
Been fantastic. Our massive pile of snow off of the deck is it melting, Natalie? I don't know.
I don't think so.
No.
It's getting a little softer, but when Obi goes out, he just goes plump.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get right to it. We're going to get to our weekly stats. And I got to tell you, I mean, it's just very, I shouldn't say shocking, but I mean, look at the new listings. These are for all the categories again: detached, semi-detached, row townhouse, apartment. 379 new listings in the last week, right? That's kind of in line with what we've seen over the last few weeks. Look at the sales this week. And we kind of predicted it because we saw the pendings last week, because pendings in the previous week are always a predictor of sales the next week to some degree. So 133% sales to new listing ratio. But let's take the last really 5 weeks. Realistically, the low was 112, the high was 163. Like it's a seller's market to start the new year for sure. 403 pending, so that's even up from last week. Days on market at 32, and then our active and pendings for a total of 2226. That is also down from last week. And Natalie, how about last year at this time?
So last year total sales was 327. This year 484. So it's up 48%. That's a lot. New listings last year was 465. This year 533. So it's up 14.5%. Active listings last year 2531. This year 2265. So it's down 10.5%. Pendings were 583 last year, 569 this year. So it's down 2.4%. This is the other one. Days on market last year, 42. This year, 32. So it's down 23.8%.
Yeah, big difference there for sure. So sales, big ups for this year. I mean, new listings very similar. I mean, 14%. That's a bit of a difference up this year. But overall, our active listings, big time down from last year. And Jaden, I know there was the big mortgage rate announcement yesterday. Tell us about that, and how has it affected anything yet?
No. The short answer is no. As we went through the end of 2023, similar kind of thing. A lot of different information that's pulling markets in different directions. So, excuse me, widely expected that we were going to have a rate pause, which we did. 4th rate pause in a row. Historically speaking, when we hit these kind of interest rate hikes that go up rapidly like they did, after 4 rate pauses, it tends to come down and start to come down relatively rapidly as well. So we're going to be watching the March announcement quite a bit closer. But some of the other stuff going on, we might see April. I think I'd said this at the beginning of the year, or first one of the year. I kind of see that March, April, where we'll start to see things going in the other direction. But who the heck knows? A lot of this market has surprised me. So we'll see. And in terms of the fixed rates, we're seeing a little bit of here and there, bumping up and down. I think we had a couple of 499s last week, and that's bumped back up to 514. But no huge movement on that area. And honestly, I'm not recommending anybody take a 5-year fix right now. So
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some renovation. I love this topic, Natalie. Renovation ideas that can add value when selling. So we were meeting with a client yesterday, and they're not necessarily needing to sell right now, but they wanted to get some ideas in terms of their market value. That's called the real estate review that we do all the time for our clients. But they also asked about renos that add value. So very timely topic today, Natalie.
Yeah, and I thought going into the spring market, it's a good idea to have this discussion because it affects everybody. So
this would not be an example of a renovation that added
no,
value.
I always have to do an ugly picture first. So, okay. All right. The first one is outdoor living spaces. So This obviously is a big thing, especially in a place like Calgary. We have such limited time outside. People really want to take advantage of it. So the first one is the front door and curb appeal can add 8% of the value of a house. And that is a big one. People make a judgment as soon as they walk up to your front door. So it's doing things like cleaning up the front porch, cleaning up the yard, adding small plants, adding pops of color. It just makes it more inviting. And then people are like, they have a good impression and they're going to come in with a good impression. The other one is adding a deck or updating or fixing your deck or outdoor living spaces, 12% in Calgary. So
that seems like a lot, but
it does seem like a lot, but it does make a difference, right? If you are talking about doing a $20,000 deck, right?
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
Appealing. The next one, obviously the number one is kitchen renovations. That's always the first one. We always say kitchens and baths. So an average, this is cross country, okay? Average of 54% return on investment, but it does vary between metro and suburban and small towns. So it can be 100% in an inner city or a luxury neighborhood, you know, and that appeals in Calgary for sure. And buyers have higher expectations now. But in 68% in rural areas or less desirable neighborhoods. So
let's clarify for people, when you're saying average of 54% ROI, so if they're spending 40 grand on a kitchen, you're saying they're going to get around 21, 22,000.
Thousand back in value when they go to sell.
So that's really important to understand, right? Like you're not getting 40 grand back. And a realtor friend of mine explained it to me earlier on in my career, where let's say you do that $40,000 reno in a kitchen, like there's going to be money spent on demolition. You don't get that back, you know, and cleaning up the junk. And there's going to be money spent on what your choices are. And preferences are for that kitchen, and then the rest is going to be value. And I think that really corresponds with what I've always understood as kitchen ROI.
Absolutely. The other one is always luxury ensuite bathrooms. Now, again, it can recoup over 70% of your costs if done well, and that is the key. This is from Zillow. I added this one in. Says you can get $1.71 in value increase for every dollar spent, but again, depends on the finishing quality and the location of your house. So that's a big one. We know that. Like if you're living in Mount Royal or someplace like that, and you do a full on, that's an expectation. Whereas if you're living in sort of, you know, not the greatest.
Well, our neighborhood, let's call it, you know, let's say Woodbine, right?
Yeah, you're not going to do $100,000 reno in a bathroom and expect to get that money back. That's just not realistic. So finished basements. This one did surprise me a little bit. In Calgary, you can get a 70% ROI, but again, depends on the finishing and the neighborhood. Now, when I'm saying finishing, it's about, depending on the size, it's about having a functional sort of meeting group space, right? Whether you have a family room, games area, that kind of thing. But typically you would want to also add a bedroom and a bathroom. That's going to be, to me, the biggest value going into it. So everything else is sort of, you know, prettiness, really. It's having that functionality in a space. So
yeah. I remember seeing a listing when we had clients that were selling up in Northwest, and it was a luxury listing over 2 million. So we were comparing against all sorts of different areas in Calgary. And this one listing in I believe it was Lakeview area, and the guy had a golf simulator in the basement. Now, as a golfer, I'm like, sweet, that's amazing. But for the average person, that might be a bit of an overbuild, right?
Yes. And that's actually what I'm talking about next, which will not add value, are highly specific customizations. And that's exactly what you're just talking about. They may not resonate with the majority of buyers, and it includes ornate trim and moldings, unconventional colors, overly themed rooms. I've been in houses where they have this full Disney thing going on, and it's like, oh, that is so much. We can't.
Well, that's your bedroom, isn't it, Jaden?
Absolutely, yeah. All the princesses, all the Disney princesses.
Exactly. Photography studios, home gyms, golf simulations. I mean, you've even seen in some luxury places they got bowling alleys. Like, not everyone's going to want that, depending on your price point.
Yeah.
Because it's more work for a buyer to do when they move in, because they're like, this is not going to go over well. So the other one is garage conversions. And we know this from experience. We had a listing, beautiful home, but they took out the double garage and turned it into a photography studio. And that was a big thing, because people wanting to come in, they were like, well, there's no front garage. And the actual garage they had was very small, like it was a little single at the back on a shared driveway. So it really does, it can devalue the house in the buyer's eyes. It's a very specific person who's going to want that. So it's better to keep a clean and organized garage if you're not planning to sell, because a garage can add a 65% ROI in Calgary. So that's a big one. And the last thing is just a piece of advice. Try not to misjudge luxury additions. Installing extravagant features that exceed your neighborhood's standard appeal doesn't provide a significant ROI. And that's a big one. Don't overbuild. You don't want to be the most expensive, most overbuilt house on the street. That's never good.
And I'll use our street as an example here in Woodbine. When we were looking at doing some exterior renovations, we wanted to do it, but we made sure like we're not over renovated on the front of our house. We didn't do hardy board, things like that, because I think there's one house on our street with hardy board, so that's not the standard, right? And we've talked about that a lot before.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so community events before we get to the forecast review. So the Beach Boys of Summer, Jubilations, always does do these fun takes on popular music or popular movies, and that's happening until March 23rd. RV Expo, it's coming up. It started today, and we are going on Sunday. So if you're going, we'd love to see you there. Calgary Hitmen are playing against Regina on the 28th. Nitro Cross. So if you're into some winter crazy flipping, flying motorbikes and snowmobiles and all that kind of stuff, Travis Pastrana-esque, that's at GMC Stadium at Stampede Park, February 2nd and 3rd. And then there's still that curling on St. Patrick's Island. So that is it for our regular show this week. And now we are going to switch to Calgary Real Estate Board forecast. So the Calgary Real Estate Board every year releases their forecast for the Calgary region. So they recap 2023, which we're not really going to focus on here. There's really a few salient points that I want to talk about and really recap for us. So there's a lot of words on the screen here. Pay attention to the bolded information in the middle. So looking ahead to 2024, migration expected to slow slightly, but remain robust enough to sustain relatively strong sales in our market. So economics. So I talk all the time. Every week we talk about this as real estate agents. If you understand real estate, obviously it's supply and demand. What creates supply and demand is life change, but life change happens because people are moving here from another province or another country because they can get a job here, right? That's really real estate broken down. So they're projecting a slight decrease in our GDP growth. I'm not going to get into all the economics of that because I'm not an economics professor. And they are expecting the West Texas Intermediate price will go up slightly. We're still an oil and gas driven province, economically speaking. And so that will certainly help keep jobs here, is my opinion of this. They're talking about the risk of a recession. The new home sector has responded to the recent rise in migration, but ultimately the level of construction will have to be more in line with the migration figures before we see substantial adjustment in supply. So what does that mean? They're just not able to put enough new homes in the ground quick enough to adapt to all the net migration that's happening into the province. So Jayden, I want you to chime in because we had a good little debate going on our chat with our business networking group. So they are using the RBC forecast because where are lending rates going to be by the end of 2024? The RBC forecast is projecting 4% as the target overnight rate. You think lower?
I do think lower. And so just for people who don't know, the target overnight rate is what prime is based on, right? So we're currently at 5%, but prime is actually 7.2, so 2.2% above that amount. I really feel I'm a bit more pessimist about the economy than the RBC economists. Really follow some of the economists that I follow are also a little bit more pessimistic. I think we see 2 to 3% down by the end of 2024. I would say 2 at the minimum, 3 at a maximum. You have to remember we've come up 4.75% in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
And so I really think that they see this as being a gradual process of kind of a quarter point at a time. When I look at what I think is going on with the economy, in my opinion, we're going to see the same kind of jumps that we saw on the way up moving on the way down. And so
Hmm.
I would assume that we start with a quarter point a couple of times like we did on the way up. But there's going to be some things, we've had those bank failures in the United States happen, and there's other things going on behind the scenes that might force them to make those big jumps of a half point and 3/4 of a point. So in my opinion, the RBC economist is a much, much more educated economist than I obviously am. But just from some of the boots on the ground things and some of the other economists that I'm reading, I could see closer to between 2 and 3% down by the end of the year.
All right. Well, there you go. So I would, for us, as we're literally renewing our mortgage or getting a new mortgage right now, I'm thinking variable.
Yeah, it's been popular. It's and listen, like it's risky, right? So if they're let's say that this RBC economist is right and things go down by 1%, well, you're in that variable at 6.3. All of a sudden, you're in a year from now, you're at 5.3. I can get you a 5.14 on a 5-year fix, a 5.24 on a 3-year fix. Are you better off just getting that? So those are all conversations you have to have with your broker and think about what your comfort level is with variable and where you think the market is going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So employment, as we talk about employment, net migration. So employment is expected to slow to 1.7%, down from 2.9. Unemployment is expected to rise slightly. We're not going to go into gross detail, but I will tell you this: comment below whatever platform you're watching this on. I will send you the full PDF, this full forecast, if you would like to read it. So this is really, really interesting. So this is showing where people have moved from into Alberta. So the vast majority that are in Canada migration came from BC, Ontario. What am I looking at? Almost 20,000 people moved to Alberta from Q1 to Q3 2023. The second largest was from BC. And then international net migration, 99, almost 100,000 people into Alberta in 2023, which is crazy. There's a little bit of a recap of last year. This one I wanted to show as well. I find this interesting. So here's the Calgary versus Edmonton comparison, because we love doing that. Our benchmark price actually rose almost 6%. Theirs went down 4%. Sales, we're not going to really compare too much. Inventory, ours was down 26%. Theirs only down 10%. And then sale to new listing ratio, 81% of our listings in 2023 sold, only 62% up in Edmonton. And months of supply, this is a real big indicator. We were only at 1.3. They were at 3.4. There's a little bit of a look. And again, message me, comment down below. I'll send this whole thing to you. We're not going to get into details here, but overall prices rose pretty much everywhere in the surrounding bedroom communities. Take a little bit at Airdrie, and supply levels are expected to improve. It will take time for the market to rebalance. And that is a common theme amongst this whole forecast for all of the areas. It's not going to just snap happen where all of a sudden there's 5,000 listings on the market. It's just not going to happen. A little bit more balanced in Cochrane, as we've talked about in the past. New listings are expected to improve in Okotoks, but it's going to take time, blah, blah, blah. The same thing we've been talking about there. So that's a bit of a recap, and I did it, and I think around 8 minutes. So yay me.
Yay you.
So, what's going to happen? I mean, I think what we've been talking about, if we continue to see net migration and job creation and jobs for people, we're going to continue to have people moving to the province. There's not enough homes for people to buy. So that puts pressure on the inventory. Now, the big question is the people that didn't sell in 2023, are they going to say, yeah, you know what? There's now enough product on the market for me to move up, to move down, right size, downsize, get out of Alberta? That will be the biggest question. I think if those people start to move, then we're going to see sales return to potentially 2022 levels. Maybe not that high, but certainly better than they were in 2023. So there it is. That's all I got. Jaden,
in less than 20 minutes
on that.
Well, I think we got it down in less than 20 minutes. That was great.
Yeah.
Yes, we did it. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, whether you're watching live or later on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, X, wherever you're watching. And again, comment if you want a full PDF of that forecast report. We'd be more than happy to email that to you. And we will see you all in 7 days.